Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much to the organizer of this event, to the European Association for Banking History, for inviting me to contribute to this symposium, since actually I'm not an historian. I would say I am a legal scholar working on law as culture, so on legal anthropology, economic anthropology, and trying to link law and religion. And I am actually specialized in something called Islamic finance. Speaking of Islamic finance today, maybe a fortunate coincidence, because as you know, Ramadan ended yesterday evening, and today is Eid al-Fitr, which is one of the most important festivities in the Muslim calendar. And so this makes my talk probably just a little bit special. Just to give you some ideas, I cannot explain Islamic finance in all its operative dimension, but when we speak of Islamic finance, we refer to the whole of transactions, products, services, institutions working in the market in a way that we define Sharia compliant. To be Sharia compliant means to operate with no interest. There is no difference between interest and usury in the Islamic legal tradition, so no interest at all. Operatively, Islamic banks, Islamic insurance, Islamic financial institutions work on equity or equity-like structure, since debt as a way of financing any enterprise is prohibited. Or you can make debt, but it's free of interest, so it is not anymore a commercial activity, while Islamic financial institutions are commercial operators. This shift from debt to equity means basically that we move from risk shifting into risk sharing, into the real economy, something that has been mentioned before. We can discuss what is real, actually, in the economy. And speaking of risk sharing, the narrative behind Islamic finance works basically in this way. Islamic finance is based on religion. Religion has, of course, a morality. This morality works in Islamic finance through risk sharing, and risk sharing through Islam determines social impact. Now, there is no clear evidence at all at the moment that the application of Islamic law or Sharia compliance in the market guarantees by itself a social impact. But what is interesting in this narrative is that Islamic finance in a certain way put on the table the relationship between finance and religion that we usually overlook. And this may explain the title of my presentation, Credere, to believe, creed, credit, and money. There is a theological dimension in what we do with finance, since from an anthropological perspective, money is not a medium of exchange simply, but it helps our everyday rituals in economic life. We trust something called euro because there is a political entity that we socially recognize, and we do believe that there is some sort of European identity behind. So there is a belief that is a fate unique to our secular age. Now, the problem is when there is a crisis in this system. So, credit lead to a financial crisis. What we are experiencing today. So the question is, what happens when individual believe, I believe in money, and the system into which it is mined, the credit it believes to be money, enter into crisis. The problem, and then I shift into the last question, is that can we put into discussion a theological critique of capitalism today? And so the relationship between religion and finance. Now, what I want to stress is that if when we speak about Islamic finance, this link between religion and finance looks so immediate to our Western eyes, we tend to forget as much as possible that there are strong religious roots behind our modern capitalism. Our secular mind works in some ways in this way. We put finance related to economics, and this does not make any problem to us. So the first side is easy to think about. Then, and this is what we are doing today, we link economics to morality, and then we speak of a moral economy and social finance. After these two steps, there is another link between morality and religion. So again, this next side is considered by itself. Morality is linked to religion. The problem, and the real problem that I want to put into discussion today, is to try to make the last link, to see that our financial system holds some sort of very strong Christian values behind, in an historical and in an anthropological perspective. Now, if you look at the picture, and then this visual help may be quite helpful, and you think of what is the result of this, it's like a kite, then maybe, visually, again, is just to give some sort of anthropological help, this makes much more sense. A kite can fly in the sky only if it is balanced in some ways. And of course, without the last corner and without linking religion and finance, we do not understand, I think, as much as we can, the current financial crisis of today. Now, as Armando just explained, there was a great cultural revolution with the birth of capitalism. Max Weber and the Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism has put the link between economics and morality, and then morality and religion, without entering the link between religion and finance. But just, again, to put it in a very simple way, I suppose that the 90% of people here are Christian Catholic, maybe. I am Christian Catholic, I'm Italian. We do believe in Christianity that everybody was born with an original sin. The original sin is an original debt that we remove through christening, through baptism. When you are baptized, it's like opening an account towards God. And to enter into a credit, no. Anthropologically, it works in this way. Your good deals for Christianity, or the grace that you will receive from the great creditor, God, as the creditor of grace, is exactly what we do with money. Looking at it from a credit perspective, an impersonal credit, we multiply credit, is like multiplying as much as possible our trust in afterlife. The idea that Christian capitalism is only greed has never convinced me that much, because there are lots of strong theological concepts behind. And in that sense, of course, the multiplicity of secular credit relation mirror this big account that we have with the creditor of grace. Now, let's move into Islam. So let's coming back in a comparative perspective to the religious and finance perspective. In Islam, there is no original sin. The Quran is clear on the point. Adam made a sin, but then he was forgiven by God, by Allah, and then he was rightly guided. Since there is no original sin, there is no redemption. The concept of redemption is pretty marginal in Islamic theology. It is mentioned some ways because there is, of course, the last day of judgment, the day of last judgment, but it has not a theological importance at all, or it is not comparable to the Christian redemption. God is not considered, or better, Allah is not a creditor in Islamic religion. He is the only proprietor and owner of all the creation. So we shift in some way from a credit law partnership into a property law partnership. Man, the Khalifa, acting as economic actor, is entrusted. The concept of Khalifa means trustship, vice-regency on earth. So you are considered the trustee. not the debtor or creditor towards God. And this reshapes completely the idea of Islamic finance in terms of the real economy, because we have to trade the property, something real, something tangible. We do not operate on credit anymore, since there is no debt. I mean, and there is no possibility to link a remuneration to debt, and so on and so forth. Now, taking seriously this relationship between religion and finance, and keeping the metaphor, we have to agree that today Western capitalism is like a kite in a storm. There is a strong financial crisis. It is not deniable. On the other side, the narrative of Islamic finance is that if you apply Islamic finance by religion, again, you will fly your kite in a sunny sky, and everything will go in the good direction. The two perspectives are, one for one reason and the other for another reason, quite impartial, because basically we keep the imbalance, an imbalance towards finance and economics for Western capitalism, and the imbalance towards morality and religion for Islamic finance. But then the question, of course, to conclude is if both Western capitalism and Islamic finance have a religious and finance background, as I've tried to demonstrate, why is our fate in the spirit of capitalism conceived as secular, and their fate in the spirit of Islamic finance is perceived as religious? The problem is sociological, basically. There is the sociology of differentiation cultures and the perception of the other. We think about ourselves as secular, we think of them as purely religious. Behind this problem, there is what I have called the ghost of Orientalism, which hunting the kite, impedes our clear understanding of this relationship between religion and finance. And with this nice picture of a ghost, I think that my time is closed.
Thank you so much.